I'm Vicki Hogarth, and welcome to Southwest Magazine. My guest today is seeking leadership of the Liberal Party of New Brunswick, Donald Arseneault. Thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I'd love to start off by talking a lot about your history, especially for new voters who might not be familiar with you, but you had a long history in politics, starting in 2003?
2003. I was, right before I thought of coming into politics, I'm originally from Dalhousie. I was working in Caraquet, but living in Bathurst. For those 2 years, I was traveling an hour to Caraquet each and every day to the Fédération des Caisses Populaires, the credit unions. So that's where I was working. And then, Sean Graham at the time lured me to run into politics. And obviously my hometown is Dalhousie, so I had to go the other way and seek the nomination. And then eventually won my election in 2003, but about 345 votes. It was, a lot of door knocking, and I hadn't lived in my community for about 10 years. So it was really a great experience. I was 27 years of age at the time, but I just loved it. And and then we got elected. We went to the legislature. We were the opposition. We actually only lost that election by 18 votes. Brenda Fowley won her riding, and that really was a determining factor in that election. So. But got to learn a lot in opposition in the legislature, because when you're 27 and you get there in the legislature, it's intimidating when you've never done it before. The public speaking and all the files and dealing with government, and so it was a great 4 years. And then in 2006, seek re-election again, and we're fortunate enough to become the government under the Graham government. And I was at that time the Minister of Natural Resources, and so that was a good time in that portfolio. And then we hit the economic recession, and back in 2008, around then, a lot of the pulp and paper mills, especially all across North America, really having some challenge and difficulties, and we lost a lot here throughout the province of New Brunswick, including my own. Bowater in Dalhousie was there for 84 years. Nobody ever thought that it would close its doors, and they employed, at the time of its closure, about 400 direct jobs, and obviously indirectly there was even more, but they had about 1,500 at one point in time of employees. So generation after generation, actually, people worked in the mill, and it was really, it's our whole front street. So it had a huge impact on the community. And when that is your whole industry, and we also had the chemical plant that was there that supplied chemicals to the pulp and paper industry, and since there was less pulp and paper companies, then therefore they had to shut down too. And then because we didn't need as much electricity in New Brunswick, because the pulp and paper industry was a big consumer, and our emulsion contract was almost due, then the power plant closed. So in the span of that 1 year and a half, every major industry in that small town of Dalhousie shut down. So that was very difficult for the community, because obviously every household in the community and the surrounding areas was impacted. And as the local politician and minister representing the government, it was tough. And I grieve with them, because I have family and friends that worked in those industries. So, but we had to find a way to reinvent ourselves. Dalhousie is a lot like here in Charlotte County, like St. Andrews. You're along the water, so there's so much opportunity. Now St. Andrews developed more the tourism industry here, and it's flourishing each and every year. It's so beautiful to come here, and you see so many tourists from all over. Dalhousie could be the same thing. We're not at the same level as St. Andrews, but we definitely they can get there. So it took a long time before, first of all, getting the community to believe they can do something different. Mm-hmm. They can do something else. It was also challenging for the actual municipality, because obviously the tax base went down big time. So when you go from a budget of $6-7 million operating budget, and all of a sudden you get a $3 million operating budget, it makes for very difficult decisions. So as a government, we had to work real hard and closely with the community to make sure that they can get through that transition. And today they're doing really well, actually even having surpluses. So it's great. So I ran in 2010. Right before that, I was Minister of Post-Secondary Education, Training and Labor. which is it was my favorite portfolio. I've always said I tell staff that anytime you can invest in people, it's a good thing. You know, and see them today, they're in the workplace and so forth. So we transformed the community college system. Community college used to be a division of government. Through this transformation, we gave them independence. So we have a NBCC network with a board of directors, and we have a CCNB network with a board of directors as well. And today they're doing great things. You know, they're able to invest in research capacity, innovation. Before they weren't allowed, because they were a division of government, they didn't have that independence and that ability to be able to do great things. And here in St. Andrews, we have a beautiful community college. That's really important for building or continuing to build the economy that we do have here in Charlotte County, especially on the hospitality and tourism side. So yeah, so I see great things for the NBCC network, including here in St. Andrews. So in 2010, unfortunately, we lost the election, and I became an opposition member again. And then we told ourselves that we don't like it here. We're going to go back to government. So, you know, we were down to probably about 13 MLAs at the time, and you know, we took the next 4 years to rebuild the trust and rebuild our party, rebuild the trust with New Brunswickers, and we ended up winning back the government in 2014 under Gallant, and at that time I became Minister of Energy and Mines. Then after a year or two, I moved on to post-secondary education, training and labor, intergovernmental affairs, official languages, as well as regional development corporation. So I've done quite a bit of portfolios. So it's, but I find that whole experience that I received over the last 15 years in my political experience, I'm the only candidate here in this leadership race that has that governance experience. And I think that is important, because you know what you can and cannot do within government, because government's big, and so I think that's important to know how to move files forward. Also, just having the knowledge of the issues, been around some of these issues, working with stakeholders throughout those years, traveling the province, knowing I can go in any community and probably point to a stakeholder, a community project, or an individual in the communities that I've dealt with over the years, and that's a big bonus as well. The civil service, obviously, you know, I have tremendous respect for the civil service, and I value the work they bring forward, and in return, they provide, you know, the production that you're looking for in order to move some files forward. So, yeah, so it's it got me to where I'm at today, and I'm quite happy.
Now, obviously, when you have a long history in politics, there's a lot on your resume that says why you should be voted leader. But there can also be a history of challenges. When you look back on your long history in politics, what would you say were the most challenging times?
Well, not to repeat the whole story again, but obviously the most challenging time in my political career is when the recession in 2008 in my local mill fell. That was very challenging, but it was also the most defining time in my career as well. I remember one evening we had about 1,000 people jam-packed in their gymnasium in my local community, and people were angry, and we had all media from print to TV to radio. Everybody was there, and for 3.5 hours I had to stand in front of a crowd at the mic answering questions or just hearing the venting. And you know, you had people standing up that you know you've helped them or somebody in their family, or you know, I don't get up in the morning, and no politician gets up in the morning and says, hey, let's close this place, or you know, do something like that, and we don't think that, and so, but you also have to understand that the community is grieving, and so they need to blame somebody. It's just the human culture kind of thing. So I took it for 3.5 hours. It was tough. The glass of wine afterwards was really good, but I remember that week when the Premier Graham at the time he kind of scolded cabinet, and he said, you know, how dare you guys leave him there by himself? Like, I went there for 3.5 by myself. And I said, Mr. Premier, I said, that was my decision. This is my community. I didn't want anybody else to be there. And when I want my colleagues to be there is that when we turn things around and we need the help of government to move a project forward, that's when I need my colleagues. So that defined me a lot in my caucus and in our cabinet, and just me as a person got to know myself a little bit more in those circumstances. But it also helps me in the future too, because governing is not easy. You're always going to have some tough files to deal with, and we're going through some very difficult files right now. Like, I was at the State of the Province, and I knew the Premier was going to do this. Like, yes, we had surplus. Yes, the economy is doing well. Yes, the population numbers are growing. But you peel that off, I do volunteer work at the Fredericton Food Kitchen. And you see, it's not just because there's a huge homeless issue in St. John and Fredericton and Moncton and a little bit in the other parts. But those aren't the only people coming in to take a meal for breakfast or lunch, or, there was seniors in there. Now it's even worse with the cost of living going up and gas and groceries and all this kind of stuff. So there's a lot of issues underlining, like affordable housing. You're seeing these rent increases. I just can't imagine being a senior on fixed income or a family on low income, and all of a sudden your rent goes up $300-400. There's a lot of those issues out there that I think that yes, we got to talk about the positive things that are going, but you also have to have empathy and focus on where we do have challenge. You talk to companies today. I was talking with Mr. Cook from Cook Aquaculture not that long ago, and he was talking about how addiction is a huge issue that he's trying to deal with, housing for workers, and when you take a step back, either it's him or any other company you're talking to around the province, is that the business community are talking about issues that 20 years ago never thought they would be talking about. And like John Wishart from the Moncton Chamber of Commerce, he was talking about how homelessness is a huge issue and it has an impact on businesses downtown, and he has to deal with it. And he says, I can't deal with the other issues that we need some attention, because I got to deal with this one. You didn't hear that kind of language 20 years ago. So things have changed, and I think there's a lot of issues that we're faced with in New Brunswick, but there's a lot of untapped opportunities as well. And so to go back to your question is my experience and my things that happened to me personally, I think helps me be able to confront some tough decisions moving forward as well.
I'm wondering what took you out of politics around 2017, and what it is inspiring you to come back now, just 5 years later. Yeah,
well, look, in 2017, at that time, I've put in about 15 years into politics, which is a long time, more than the average politician here in New Brunswick. I felt that I've given a lot. I've given my time to my community. And a little bit going back to my community of Dalhousie, is that now 10 years later, after the mill closed, we've got to the point where we turn things around. And I felt maybe now's the time that we can hand over the baton to somebody else with a new vision for the area. And at the same time, I had interest in the trying to not necessarily get into federal politics, but to work with the federal government in Ottawa. So I did accept a job as a government relations manager for Canada's Building Trades Union. So I was living in Fredericton. Every week I was going to Ottawa back and forth. And I did that for 2 years. Great experience, don't get me wrong. I loved Ottawa and love networking with the federal government of the time. And but after 2 years, I really realized I missed provincial politics. I missed being closer to the public and the communities, the stakeholders. You're more hands-on and trying to solve issues in provincial politics. So I came back and started looking at how I can help the provincial party at the time. So here we are. Here's an opportunity that I saw that I can bring my experience and to the table and offer it to our Liberal members that are going to be voting on August 6th, and hoping that they will choose me as their next leader. And if they don't, I'll respect that decision as well.
Is it fair to say in the 2020 election, it was disappointing for the Liberal Party, and is it fair to say that you have a better grasp on where you think it's going now?
I do think I have a better grasp. Look, I mean, it was Mr. Vickers is a great man, a great resume. Unfortunately, he has never ran in a provincial election before, so it was difficult for him as well. Then we throw in COVID in there, where there was no interaction with the public that much, so that made it difficult. there was no opportunity for him to in a by-election to be able to gain a seat and be in the legislature and gain that kind of experience. So it was difficult for him. And the premier at the time called the election, and you know, would I have done the same thing? Probably so. It was an opportune time where people were, like at that time, COVID was managed better than towards the end, but at that time, and you know, look, we have a lot of seniors in New Brunswick and a lot of people that are concerned with healthcare, and they were concerned with COVID, and you don't want to start changing everything just because there's an election. There's an opportunity to change. So I think you've seen a lot of people just wanted to play it safe at that time, but the Liberal Party wasn't ready. You know, I was brought in a month before the election to manage the campaign. You know, the party was struggling financially. They had no platform that was built. The candidate recruitment was really lacking at that time, and you're in a minority situation. So with 1 month to go, a lot of work had to be done to try to get us to a level that, you know, we can run a respectable campaign. Look, at the end, we lost a few seats, but we have 16. Well, at election time we had 17, but obviously with Lisa Harris leaving now, the Liberals are at 16. We have 2 years of plan now, and I've always said what the Liberal Party needs is better planning. So August 6th is the convention. There's a new leader. If I'm given that opportunity, well, a week later I'll name a campaign manager, and they have 2 years to plan. It's fixed election dates. We know when it is, third Monday in October 2024. So, you know, start planning now. Don't procrastinate. Wait till, you know, I'll wait all next week and the week after and the month after, and then it all, in politics, time flies. So I do feel that, you know, the understanding of what happened back in 2020, you know, what people expect, and I do have that grasp, and I do think I'm the best situated person in order to lead us into 2024.
And is that your sense on the campaign trail now as you're seeking leadership, that the voters are feeling very much differently than they felt in 2020? And we see that in New Brunswick often within a 4-year period. The whole province can shift its perspective.
Well, no doubt. Look, there's been a lot of frustration over the last several months, and people are, you know, are hurting financially right now, and we feel that the government is not the most accountable at the moment. You know, just to put in perspective, as of May 1st, we can add a few weeks, but I did the calculation as of May 1st. Blaine Higgs has been premier for 1,284 days. If I asked you how many question periods there were in those 1,284 days, how many would you think?
I don't know.
120.
Okay.
That's not a lot. And the legislature is important. You know, in Ottawa, in Parliament, they sit a minimum of 165 days a year. And under Higgs, I don't even know if we reach 50 days a year. He doesn't want to go to the legislature where he gets questions by the opposition parties. And we need that. You know, we have a throne speech every year. Every fall, the premier does a throne speech. And that lays out the agenda for the government and what they want to do. And there's a lot of files out there. We talk about municipal reform, health reform, all that stuff. You put that in your throne speech, what exactly you're going to do. We haven't had one since November 19, 2020. So we're going on almost 2 years without a throne speech. So he's given himself a carte blanche to do whatever he wants. That's not being accountable to New Brunswickers in the legislature. You know, we have in Miramichi on the June 20th, we're finally going to get those by-election going to happen. But Miramichi has been left without 2 seats for the past year. For 1 year, they've been without those 2 seats at a time where we're talking about municipal reform, where it does have an impact in the Miramichi, but nobody can stand up in Miramichi and ask the question to the premier in the legislature, or health reform, which is always sensitive in every region of our province. But yet there's 2 seats that are vacant for the past year that they can't ask the questions. They had 2 health commissioners. They muzzled both of them. They can't answer questions on what is it that they're trying to achieve here with our healthcare system. So all these factors and so many more makes it such that, you know, this is probably the most unaccountable premier in government that we've seen in modern history. And that needs to change. And so when I say people are hurting, people want, you know, a lot of times to put forward initiatives to help people is you got to be in the legislature, but if you're not in the legislature, a lot of these initiatives don't get done. You know, we're the only province in the country that had a surplus budget over the last 2 years, almost $1 billion. 900 million, I think, in some. And yes, we need to be fiscally responsible. As a Liberal government moving forward, I want our government to be fiscally responsible. But you also have to have empathy for those who needs a helping hand. They've left $900 million there in surplus. Now, a portion of that's federal money, I get that, but there has to be some room to maneuver there. We have in the carbon tax this year projected revenue of $226 million. That is a tax that consumers, that we pay, at the pump, and that's supposed to be reinvested, but we're not seeing that reinvestment being done. It's not there to pad your budget surplus. It's there to reinvest in either energy efficient programs or other measures you can do to help people at the pumps and not. Just the gas tax, when they did their projections, I don't know what the numbers they use, but I would think, let's say they would project the revenue based on $1.50 a liter. Well, it's 207. So the government is making, on that 57 cents, they're making money on that. So why can't we reinvest that? Keep what you projected, but the extra, why don't you reinvest at a time where people are hurting in so many ways?
What is the Liberal perspective on the People's Alliance, the two members, Michelle Conroy and Chris Austin, moving to the Conservative Party?
Well, look, I mean, we knew they were working very closely together, and it is what it is. I find it unfortunate to have a political party, because now they're back in, that has those kinds of views. I get that, we have some differences, but look, I've done many political panels with Chris Austin over the years, and there's a lot of the comments that he made I find is unfortunate, but I'm not surprised that they both crossed the floor over to the government. They've been working hand in hand and you just wait. This is the last week of the legislature. Give it a couple of weeks. Premier Hayes is going to do a cabinet shuffle, and I would put $100, I'm going to say to your viewers, $100 on the table that Chris Austin is going to be in cabinet.
Okay, well, I will watch for that. For our last few minutes here, what are the key platform takeaways for you if you are elected leader?
Well, look, for me, my biggest priority, what I want to focus on as a government is families, investing in families. And I think every decision the government does, we need to go back and what's the impact, the financial and emotional impact on families. I see what's happening now. You got young couples that are, have high student debts. That first mortgage, even more so in the market that we're in now, is very hard. If it's even affordable housing is very hard to find. There's property taxes are continuing to increase, and all these factors and many more, it prevents you from wanting to have kids. We have about 6,200 births per year, and we have about 7,600 deaths per year. Yes, we got to focus on immigration, don't get me wrong, but we also need to find ways of how do we make our own families grow here in New Brunswick, that the people that are already here. So I do want a family policy. I do want a birth policy, and actually I put those media releases out in the last several weeks. I do think we need to find ways that if we can reduce the financial burden on families, then we can hopefully they can grow their families as well. And I think for me that's a huge opportunity and a huge priority for me. Also investing in people, maybe it's my time at post-secondary education, training, and labor. We need to invest in people, invest in training. We need to grow our population with immigration. We also need to rebuild our relationship with Indigenous communities. I mean, it is the worst that I've seen in modern history. The way that this premier is acting towards Indigenous communities, I find it's very unfortunate, and we need them. I had the opportunity to work with Indigenous communities through natural resource, either in the mining sector, the energy sector, the forestry sector, when I had those portfolios, in dialogue. They want to work too, and they want to be part of the solution. So that is another component that the next government, whoever it is for me, but whoever it is needs to really focus on that as well as a priority.
Well, thank you so much for being here today, and I hope to have you back again soon.
I will, August 7th.
My guest today has been Donald Arseneault, who is seeking leadership of the New Brunswick Liberal Party. I'm Vicki Hogarth. Thank you for watching Southwest Magazine.
Southwest Magazine is a news and public affairs production of CHCO Television.